Hey everyone, and welcome to Chef AJ Live. I'm your host, Chef AJ, and this is where I introduce you to amazing people like you who are doing great things in the world that I think you should know about. My guest today is Dr. Carlo Alvaro, and he actually saw me interviewing somebody he knows on the show, Dr. Doug Graham, and he actually wrote me and asked to be on the show, which I love when you guys do that because I don't like rejection when I ask people and they say no. So please welcome him to the show. It's very nice to meet you.
Thank you very much, Chef AJ. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for reaching out. So who is Dr. Carlo Alvaro?
All right. Well, the first thing that I have to say is that Dr. Carlo Alvaro is an immigrant from Italy. I grew up in Italy, but I went to school here. I did all my graduate and undergrad and graduate here in the States, in New York, where I live currently. I am a professional philosopher. So that means I'm a professor of philosophy at the City University of New York. I specialize in ethics. And I wrote, so far I wrote 4 books, 2 of which are on topics of veganism. And my second book specifically, which is, if I can show it to you, this one, Raw Veganism, the Philosophy of the Human Diet, is a book dedicated, as the title speaks for itself, on raw veganism. And the reason why I wrote that book is because I never saw any book at that point on ethical raw veganism. Because when you see books around, they're always about the diet or veganism in general. And so I thought that since that is my passion, and I have a pretty interesting philosophical argument about it, I wrote that book. So I teach, philosophy in university at the City University of New York. I'm an author. I'm the father of 3 children who, by the way, have been vegan. People wonder since they were born, they never had animal products, and they're still alive. They get proteins and all that. And I live in Manhattan, and here I am now.
Wow. So you're from Italy. So the first thing I'm thinking, if you're raw vegan, it's like, well, don't you miss the pasta?
Well, it's an interesting question because when I first went raw, I didn't go raw when I was in Italy. I went raw when I was here in the States. But when I first went raw, I remember that I kind of missed pasta, starches in general. For the first, I don't know how long, maybe a month or 2. But then all of a sudden something clicked in my body, and I just started looking at pasta as what it is, as something not food. I didn't regard it as food anymore.
Did you go vegan before you went raw vegan?
Yes. So the story is that when I was in, I think I was in middle school. I was around 13, 14 years old. So I remember the situation. There were some classmates who were protesting. And so I wanted to see what the commotion was about. And I approached them and I said, "What are you complaining about?" And they were complaining about makeup because it's tested on animals. So they said it's cruel, it's not right. And the curious thing is that I asked them a question. I said, "But do you guys eat meat?" "Yes, we do, but so what?" And so I walked away triumphant, and I thought that I embarrassed them because they were hypocrites. But then something hit me, and I said, "But wait a minute, I think that it's wrong. I cannot just bring myself to continue doing something that is wrong." And from that moment on, I went vegan. I decided to go vegan. Now, what I wanted to emphasize here is that when I went vegan in the 80s, as you know, we didn't have internet. I didn't know anything about veganism. I didn't know anybody, especially in Italy. In the States, it's a bigger environment, it's better. But in Italy, we're nothing at all. I never read a book or anything. I just realized that eating animals was something that I didn't want to be part of. And now the second point that I want to emphasize is that, as you pointed out, Italian pasta and the tradition, imagine being a vegan in Italy in the 1980s. So pretty much everybody made fun of me, including my family, my mother, my father, my sister, my brother. They thought I was an idiot or I was just gone crazy. But what can I tell you? I had to do it. I felt that it was wrong. And at that point, I didn't really have arguments to back it up. I just felt that it was wrong.
Wow.
This is the 1980s.
Well, that's why it's called ethical veganism, I think.
Yeah. But then the raw came, let's see. I was in college here in America, in New York. And I remember that year, which was 2000, around 2000. Okay. I went to college late. So it was around 2000. And I was doing an internship with the Attorney General. And I worked at the Attorney General's office. So I remember my colleagues would ask me what I wanted for lunch. You want to join us? We're going down here. We're going pizza, whatever. And I said, no, I'm not having lunch. And that was the first thing that they said, that sounds weird. You're not having lunch. Now, then later on, I go downstairs. There's a guy who sells fresh fruit downstairs. So I buy some grapes, and I go back to the office and I eat my grapes. And they were there laughing at me. I mean, think about it. What kind of society we live in, that it's so bizarre for people that you're having grapes for lunch. So that is your lunch? Yeah, and I said, that is my lunch. And I swear to you, this is how it went. It just something clicked. And I said, you know what? I can have this for lunch. Why do I have to have bread, pasta, and so on? From now on, I'm going to have fruit. Don't ask me how. I figured that out. But I said, I like fruit. Fruit is good. No doubt about that. Right? No one is going to dispute that fruit is good. Why don't I have fruit? And from that moment on, I had fruit for lunch. But at that time, I was eating 2 or 3 meals a day. I would have breakfast sometimes, not always, lunch, and then a dinner.
And so you didn't really, had you heard about raw veganism, or this is just something that came to you?
I had it back then when I went raw. I had no idea. I didn't know that there was such thing as raw veganism. I had no idea there was a movement. I had no idea that I was going to become known as a vegan philosopher. I didn't know that I was going to write my dissertation on ethical veganism. I had no idea. By the way, I wasn't even following that much YouTube back then. So I didn't know all the movement and the people. It's just that I don't know how to call it instinct, whatever you want to call it.
How many years have you been raw? And how many years have you been vegan?
Well, vegan since I was 14. I'm 48 now. You do the math. So
I'm very bad at math, but I'm going to say 34 years.
yeah, something like that. I don't count it, but I was, as I said, I was either 13 or 14. I'm pretty sure I was 14 years old.
Wow.
And my family made fun of me. To this day, when I tell my sister, do you remember that you were making fun of me? She said, no, I never did that. Yes, you did. I remember. Because you were making fun of me. When I was eating my salad, you were eating eggs and cheese in my face. Remember? That's how it was.
That's funny. And how many of those 34 years have been exclusively raw?
Well, as I said, raw was since 2000. So 22 years.
Wow. And are you like an 80-10-10 raw vegan? You know how there's different types of raw veganism. Are you mostly fruitarian?
I'll tell you what it is. All those terms are fine, but they're like gimmicks, and they might be helpful. So they're helpful. They have positive aspects and negative aspects. My approach to diet, I don't count the calories. I don't count the ratios. I just eat. And I have to say, when you start this diet, you make a lot of mistakes. I'm sure you can relate to this too. You make a lot of mistakes. You eat too much of this, too much of that. And other mistakes, if you want to call them mistakes, whatever. So to get what I am now, because right now I'm really solid. I know what I eat, when to eat, and if I don't have the conditions that are right, I would rather not eat. So right now I'm in a position in my life that I have enough energy to do everything that I do. And we can talk about that because my colleagues are shocked that I produce so much. I write books, papers, do presentations. I have a family of children. And if they tell me don't eat anything tonight, that's fine. I'm not suffering. I'm not going to be hungry. So I eat once a day, and I know what to eat. And so to answer your question, my specific diet, I don't know if it's 80-10-10, or I don't know what to call it. I eat salad and fruit. Those are the only two things that I eat. Now, I eat more fruit than salad. Salad, I really eat a small bowl of salad, but mostly I eat fruit, tons and tons of fruit. But I eat it once a day. So I don't know what you want to call that, if it's 80-10-10, 80, whatever.
Do you eat any overt fats, nuts, seeds, avocado, coconut, anything like that? Oils?
I do eat avocados. I don't consume oil or other kinds of fats. I don't eat nuts because I'm sure you know the most nuts in any case are not raw. They're cooked by law in the United States. They have to be steamed. They have to be heat processed because they last longer, first of all, on shelves, and they're afraid of bugs and other things, so they cook them. But I stay away from nuts and seeds.
No seeds either. No seeds either.
No nuts and seeds. No nuts and no seeds. Occasionally, if I find some raw nuts, but I don't really seek them. If for example my wife comes home and says these are raw, really raw, certified, and they're raw, we checked, and they're raw, pistachio, for example, I might eat a handful, but normally as a norm I stay away from nuts and seeds.
You mentioned that your children have always been vegan. Is your whole family raw with you, or is that just you?
No, my family is not raw. My wife is raw. my children are not raw. They tried when they were younger. They tried, and at one point they gave up and they started eating everything else. Obviously, always vegan. But my wife has been raw for a couple of years now.
So does she eat only one meal
And in
a
the
day?
past,
Does she eat only one meal a day as well?
initially she was eating. Well, she has a strange diet. I mean, not a strange diet. It's strange the way she eats. She was eating throughout the day, very small bites. For example, in the morning, she would eat some couple of dates and some grapes. And then at 1 o'clock, she would eat a little more. And then in the evening, I guess you can call it the dinner, the bigger meal. But then I, I asked her to try doing what I'm doing and see the results, that we can talk about it. And so she's been now following my directions, and she's having one meal a day.
Well, do you guys have that meal together? And what time of day do you have it? And I'm curious, Dr. Alvaro, how do you get enough calories in just one meal a day? I'm guessing it's a pretty big meal.
It's not as big as you think. It's not as big as you think, but okay. So to answer the first question, when do we have that meal? Typically, I don't have anything to eat in the morning. Okay, because it gets in the way. I teach. Well, right now I'm not teaching because the semester is going to start actually this Friday. Yeah, but when I teach, there's nothing worse than having food in your stomach and traveling to the university and standing up in front of your students and lecturing with food in your stomach and the digestion going on in that moment. That's something I never, ever do. So my meal is typically at the end of the day. Now, the end of the day could be right now that I'm not teaching, although I'm working, I'm writing, doing research. Right now, the end of the day could be around 4, 5, or 6 p.m. Normally, when I teach classes sometimes in the afternoon. It might be a little later, but nothing in the morning. Now, the second question, is it a big meal? It's not as big as you think. I'm not sure how many calories I eat because I never counted. I can tell you roughly. It could be something in the region of maybe 1,500 calories, sometimes less, sometimes more, depending on what I do. I used to run marathons competitively, and I used to eat more. Right now, I go to the gym every day. I go on my bike and I run. Typically, that's what I do. I go on a bike 30 miles and then I run. In the summer, that I'm actually outside and with my bike, not the stationary bike, I do more than 30 miles. I really do 40, 50, 60 miles a day. And so that might require a little more calories. But the point is that whatever I eat is enough to fuel all my physical activities and mental activities as well.
Give me an example of what that meal is.
Sure. Let's say that I normally, typically, it would be something like 2 big heads of lettuce and maybe 4 or 5 tomatoes, small tomatoes. And typically I would eat sometimes 2, sometimes 3 avocados. And then after that, I have I don't really count it, but I have as much fruit as I like. I really stuff my face with fruit. I mean, I don't do it on purpose, but I eat, and when I feel I'm satisfied, I just stop. So that could be 3, 4 bananas, 2 mangoes, 1 or 2 apples, some dates, 4, 5 or 6 dates, and an orange or 2. So, I mean, relative to a normal person, yes, that's a lot of food. But you have to consider that I eat only once, and I eat only fruit and vegetables. So most people are afraid if you say 1 banana and 2 oranges, oh, that's a lot of fruit. Yes, because you ate your pasta, your lasagna, your mac and cheese first. So that's too much, of course. So it's not a lot if you consider the kind of food that it has a lot of volume, a lot of water, but really not a lot.
Do you feel better or different eating exclusively raw than when you were vegan?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I can, it's not like you think, yeah, I guess I feel better. No, it's day and night. All right. It's day and night. I mean, you feel different. First of all, one weird thing that happens to you when you go raw for as long as I have, you don't need to sleep as much because you go to bed. Now, of course, this I have to premise this. You have to have the kind of life, and thank goodness I am fortunate enough. I'm lucky that I have a wonderful life. I have a wife who loves me, I have children. I have a career that I love. I do what I like to do. So I'm not nervous. I'm not anxious. I don't feel pressure, and I'm lucky for that. I thank the sky, the gods, whatever. Okay, but I go to bed. Typically, I go to bed early. But even if I go to bed a little later meaning 10, 30, 11, midnight, I wake up at the same time. I wake up at 6 a.m., 5:30, 5:30 in the summer, that it's lighter and warmer. And I feel fresh. I don't need coffee. I don't need food. I'm not hungry because I have enough energy to do everything that I do. And that's an interesting thing. You sleep less. That's what happened to me, at least.
How much less? Because I was raw for a couple of years, and that was one of the things I didn't like about it, is that I couldn't sleep more than about 4 hours. And it just like, what do I do with all this time?
So you like to stay in bed a long time?
Well, I mean, it's not that I like to stay in bed, but I don't know. It just felt weird not needing much sleep.
Well, the important thing is that your mind is clear. And yes, to continue the answer, the difference is enormous, because I really specifically remember that when I was a vegan, not a raw vegan, my mental clarity was not the same. And probably is also due to the fact that I was eating more meals throughout the day. But now I am clear, sharp. I told you, I'm not saying this to brag or anything, but my colleagues are amazed at how much stuff I put out, how productive I am. Because in just last year, I published 2 books. I published my this is my 3rd book that has nothing to do with veganism, by the way. It's on deism, and it's a 350-page book. It's a huge research that I've done for this one. It took me a couple of years to do this research, and I feel fresh. And also, let me tell you about the physical aspect. I can do things that I have to say most men at my age are not able to do. For example, I have a running buddy who's 25 years old, because I cannot find any, I'm not saying that there aren't any, but I can't find any 48-year-old man who's able to go out for a run, a 10-mile run, easy. It's just impossible. So again, I'm sorry if I sound like I'm bragging. I'm not bragging. I'm just saying I can do these things, and I felt a huge difference when I went raw.
Wow, that's amazing. But why do you think it's the rawness of your diet or the fact that you're only eating one meal a day, or both?
I think the one meal a day helps a lot, because I tried raw vegan, eating a breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And then I tried lunch and dinner, and it didn't work as well. I felt sluggish and heavy. You're there doing your activities, you're teaching, you're writing, you're reading a book, and there's food in your stomach, you burp, and all that stuff. It just didn't work. So eating one meal a day, it really worked, because it made me lighter. But let's not forget the real reason why I'm eating one meal a day, because I'm not hungry throughout the day. So it's either I just force myself to eat, or I just don't eat. And so that's how it really, I didn't plan to eat one meal a day. The reason is that years ago, not too long ago, I was running marathons. And so that means running every single day, 60, 70 miles a week. Okay. So I was eating more often, more calories. But then when I stopped running competitively, I said, just I don't need all those calories, and I'm not hungry right now, so I'm not eating. And I naturally went toward that conclusion of eating once a day.
Do you ever miss anything cooked? The smell?
No, as I mentioned before, at first, for I don't remember how long, a couple of months, maybe, I missed the texture of pasta and rice and potatoes, because those things are, some people say, and there's research showing that those foods are addictive. I'm not sure if that's the case. Perhaps it's the case, but I grew up that way, eating pasta, eating pizza, eating bread, and so that was something that I had to fight at first. But then it went away. It went away just like eating meat. Just I can't possibly look at a steak and say that's a meal. Now the smell, the perfumes of certain foods, I like them, but it's an interesting thing that happened to me. When I first went raw, I would smell, for example, potatoes, right? French fries, or any other cooked food, vegan food, of course. And it would remind me, and I would think, food. But then in time, something really weird happened to me. Right now, when I smell those things, it's like I smell perfume, cologne, for example. It's good, but I don't want to eat it. You see, I smell aftershave. It's very good, but I don't want to eat it. Same story with food. So, for example, I love the smell of coffee, but I would never want to drink it, because it's horrible. I remember drinking coffee years ago. It's horrific. So right now, no. As I said to you earlier, I'm really solid. I don't have cravings or temptations or cheat meals or anything like that. If they told me, oh, you can cheat, no one is looking, I wouldn't know what to do, because I'm not interested in mac and cheese or burgers or anything like that.
Do you add any salt to your diet?
I don't buy salt. I buy it because of my children, but
Who cooks for them?
I cook. I used to. I love cooking. Cooking relaxes me, and in fact, I remember years ago my wife is originally from Washington D.C. So I went to Washington D.C. and we were invited over to a friend's house. This guy lives in Maryland, and he has a huge mansion, and he's got one of those. It's amazing, one of those kitchens. As a matter of fact, I have never seen a kitchen like that, not even in a restaurant. And I worked in a restaurant business for a moment, and I was amazed. I said, "Listen, you have to allow me to cook in this kitchen because it's beautiful, professional appliances and everything." So he said to me, "Well, why don't you cook for us tonight?" I said, "Okay, just give me the money. I'll buy." We were 30 people. So I said, "Let's go to the grocery store. Let's buy food and I'll cook for you." And so when it came to when the guests came over, they were enjoying what I prepared, and they were started asking me for my business card. And I said, "Well, look, I'll give you my business card, but I'm not a chef." "Oh, I thought you were a chef." So I like to cook, and so it's either myself or my wife. She cooks too,
Wow.
but I really enjoy cooking.
That's so interesting. You know, the raw food community tends to be a very tight-knit community because it's not a very large community. Do you have other friends that eat like you, or is it just you and your wife?
I have vegan friends, and as a matter of fact, I'm going to tell you something that is going to sound terrible to you. I'm a vegan racist because I tend to be friends with vegans. I do have a couple of friends who eat meat, but I typically have more vegan friends than not. And but raw vegans, no. I know Dr. Graham, but we're not friends. We never talked. I would like to talk to him one day, maybe meet him. But I can't think of any other person, even in New York, who's a raw vegan.
Wow.
Because raw vegans,
it's cold in New York. Are you, that was the one thing I didn't like about being raw, is I always was cold.
yeah, I heard that before. And to tell you the truth, I have no idea what that means because for example, right now I'm in my office, and I have a space heater, and if I'm cold, I just turn it on, and so no problem with that. So that was never an issue for me. I heard it many times that people like the feeling of, for example, drinking tea, something that I don't do. And so even though in New York City today actually wasn't so bad, 45 degrees, but last week we went down to 8 degrees, and that's polar completely. But I never once said to myself, I need to buy some tea or I crave for something hot.
Wow. I don't know what that's like. I live in the desert and I'm still always cold. I'm curious, Dr. Alvaro, in your college classes, does your diet ever come up, and do your students ever ask about that? And do you ever try to educate them about why you eat the way you do?
They do. As a matter of fact, I am at when I teach I also teach some classes at FIT, is the Institute of Technology, and they course in veganism and the fashion industry, these things all the time: animal ethics, animal rights, and in my specific up a lot. That I'm happy about, even if it's a small cushion, is that every semester, when the semester ends, at every end of the semester, I have at least one or two students who either contact me by New York City or whatever, they tell me that they went vegan. Sometimes some people say that they tried or they want to try to be raw. But these things come up in my classes, certainly.
That's so interesting. So you say you teach, are you an ethics professor? Is that what you said?
Yes, I'm in ethics. Yes.
What does that mean? Like what do you teach?
Okay, so I teach several courses in ethics. For example, I teach an introduction to ethics, where I talk about the most important concepts in ethics, meta ethics, applied ethics, and so on. Often I teach medical ethics, okay, or bioethics, or healthcare ethics. So these are applied ethics courses where we talk about specific cases, abortion, cloning, and so on. But I also teach animal ethics, and I also teach logic. That's another specialty of mine. So I teach many courses, but mostly I'm interested in ethics.
Well,
so I've been doing.
Your book is called, show your book again, because the title is about veganism and ethics.
Yeah, so this is Raw Veganism, the Philosophy of the Human Diet. Yes, this is, as I said earlier, there are many books on veganism. Now, very few, I have to say, very few on ethical veganism. As a matter of fact, once again, it's going to sound like I'm bragging, but really I don't want to do that. My first book, which is this one, which is entitled Ethical Veganism, Virtue Ethics, and the Great Soul. When I wrote this book, so originally I wanted to write my dissertation on the philosophy of physics, because one of my passions as an avocation, I study physics. I love physics. So I wanted to write my dissertation on that. And but then at one point I changed my mind and I started thinking about writing a book on veganism, because now I'm talking about academic books, okay? I'm not talking about books on veganism in general, but ethical vegan books that explain veganism in a philosophical, rigorous philosophical and ethical argument. At that point, there were no books on ethical veganism. So I wrote that one. And so it's probably the first book that started the current of ethical veganism in academia, okay, in academia. But then a year later, my publisher asked me to write something on veganism, because I was famous in veganism, you can say, but something original, because, okay, we heard about veganism, vegetarianism, Peter Singer, and all the philosophers that everybody knows. And so I said, well, I can write a book about my own diet, which is raw veganism. And And I did a research, there was absolutely zero, nothing on ethical raw veganism. And so I wrote the book. So let's say the first part of the book is dedicated to philosophical arguments in why raw veganism is the way to go, the way to be a vegan, a responsible, ethical vegan. Why? Because, well, the way I frame the argument is that, in my view, morality is not about rules or utility, but rather about character. Okay, so our character, and mostly when you read arguments for veganism, it's always about the animals. It's not. I'm not saying that that's not important, right? That their animals are not important, but typically you hear two things: animals suffering. Okay, so the capacity, so sentience. That's one of the main themes in all vegan arguments, and the other one is personhood, whether animals are persons meaning in a philosophical sense moral agents, or persons in a sense that they can experience somehow morality and so on. And I come with a completely different approach. And I explain that raw veganism is conducive to the type of philosophical approach that I endorse, which is virtue ethics. And furthermore, it is the best approach that we can follow regarding the environment. Because if we really care about the environment, we don't want to cook anything. We don't want to process anything in factories. We want to use minimal amount of water. They always say, well, vegans consume very little water compared to vegetarians and meat eaters. Well, think about raw vegans. We eat our water, and we don't require packages. We don't require washing dishes with soap and detergents and so on. So it seems to me. So in that book, that's my argument. In my book, it's the most environmentally, so the friendliest, the environmentally friendliest approach to veganism.
But isn't all veganism ethical?
Well, yes, in a way, yes. In a way, no. In a sense that I wrote this in my book, in another chapter that I'm writing now, that I'm working on now. It seems to me that veganism, of course there are several approaches even to veganism, because there are people who eat steamed broccoli, and there are people who eat fake meats and highly processed foods. Okay, but it seems to me that that veganism, cooked veganism, seems to promote, in a sense, self-indulgence, eating more, the pleasure of eating, the pleasure of cooking, preparing things, and consuming more. Whereas raw veganism, it's more consistent with I would say, well, I compare it to Stoicism. I mean, consistent with Stoicism, the idea of doing less. Doing less is better in life. Being more relaxed, thinking less about food, thinking less about gourmet, thinking less about decadent meals. Okay, and so some forms of veganism, cooked veganism, in my view, obviously they are more ethical than just slaughtering animals, but not quite there. And so so that's why I wrote that book. In that book, I say, if you really care about, I mean, the point is caring about the animals, not torturing, not causing harm to animals, and most of all, not causing harm to the environment. Well, if those are your goals, well, then raw veganism is the way to go.
Well, don't you think that's going to be too big of a leap for most people? I mean, with the amount of animal products and processed food that most people eat on a daily basis, do you really think they're going to go from the standard American diet to 1 meal a day raw veganism? Is that realistic?
Well, it's possible. I don't know what you mean by realistic. I mean, it would be
Realistic to
difficult.
expect people to make that big of a leap.
No,
Because
but
you didn't go from being a person living in
Yes,
Italy
yes.
eating bread and pasta to your diet today.
No, I certainly, I never said that. I don't endorse that view anyway. And I don't even expect it anyway. I don't even, although I dream of a vegan world tomorrow, I would never expect that everybody goes vegan tomorrow. Okay, so I don't expect people to go raw, and far from expecting people to go raw vegan and eating 1 meal a day. It's not for everyone. I totally understand that, but because as I said before, as I mentioned before, there are a lot of things that have to fall into place in your life. Okay, so the kind of person that I am, the kind of life that I have now, as I told you, I'm very happy, I'm satisfied, I have a wonderful job, a wonderful family, and so everything fell into place, and I'm in a position to eat once a day. So that might not be for everyone, of course, but that being said, it is a possibility. Everyone can do it, and it's very beneficial. So that's why I endorse it very much. Although I don't expect anyone to just go cold turkey, pun intended, right? And but it's certainly possible and desirable.
Why would many people don't like the ethical argument for veganism? I mean, when you think about it, it wasn't really until Forks Over Knives that I really saw, I've been vegan for 45 years, by the way, and I didn't see a big shift in people moving towards a more plant-based diet until after Forks Over Knives, when they realized that there was something in it for them, their health. And now, of course, we have the environment. Why do you think people don't care about animals, or at least not about certain animals?
I am writing. It's interesting that you asked that, because I'm writing a chapter for a project as we speak, and so I'm doing some research on psychology. And the long story short, there's a scientific evidence that people prefer certain animals because of their certain similar characteristics. Okay. Physical and behavioral characteristics. But I wanted to say something to what you said. You said something very important. And I wanted to say this. Just take a moment to think about it. Maybe it will come across as rude. I don't know. The point is that you have to understand that many people, unfortunately, do not understand ethics. And what I mean is that they can read it, they can read about it, they can read books about it, they can go to conferences, they can even understand the grammar of the sentences, but they don't really internalize it. So what I'm saying to you, it's not easy to understand the gravity of the situation and the depth of importance of morality, of living a moral life. And people would say to you typically, yeah, no, I know, I understand it, but they really don't understand it. So that's one big issue. People do not understand morality. One of the reasons why is, if you ask me, is that moral education is completely inexistent. There's no moral education in school. My students, I teach college students and graduate students sometimes, and these are adults. They arrive to college or grad school with zero understanding of morality. Their morality, they learned it on the street. They heard some notions about it. And so, long story short, this is one of the reasons why people don't like, as you put it, don't like the moral argument, because they're not capable of understanding ethics. And not to mention the fact that after all, we live in a society. Most of us do not choose the kind of society we live in, and it's hard to step out of our point of view, our perspective, and see what's beyond our noses. And so we live in a society that is meat-centered, and it is selfish. Typically, well, I mean, think about it. I live in New York City. Who cares about me? Nobody cares about me, my wife, my children. But then when I step outside, it's just a jungle. People don't really care about you. And do I blame it? No, I don't blame it, because life is tough. There are people, some of my students, for example, have 2 jobs. They go to classes, they try to make it. It's hard, it's tough. And so the last thing that you want to think about is the importance of living a moral life. It's very hard. It's not for everyone. That's why you come as a scholar, you come to studying. And in fact, I have to say, I was discussing this with one of my colleagues the other day. Even it is difficult even for scholars to understand morality, because this friend of mine, this colleague of mine, he's another philosopher. We were saying that many philosophers don't even understand the moral argument. And in fact, he was saying, it seems to me that more philosophers than there are should be vegans. But in fact, they're not. Some of them, I talked to some of my colleagues, and I was baffled that they don't even get it. They said, I don't see it as an issue at all, the idea of eating animals. So it's a very complicated story. That's why they don't appreciate the moral argument. However, I have to say also, I have to add, you said that now more people are going vegan because they're reading the literature, they're watching shows, movies, documentaries. However, I have to say, people are confused and they don't stay vegan. I know for a fact that many people who try to go vegan for the reason that you said, because, I watched, Forks Over Knives. I never watched it, by the way. Maybe I should. They go vegan, they try, and then maybe a year later or even sooner, they go back to eating meat, and they say, here's the research, and there is research. Obviously, there is research because, as you know, that research is funded by private corporations. It's funded by the dairy industry, it's funded by the meat industry. And so there's research saying, no, you don't have to go vegan. Even the World Health Organization says, no, you don't have to go vegan. Harvard Medical School says, no, you don't have to go vegan. As long as you eat this much of red meat in 1 week, you're going to be fine. And so people, even what you said, people are not really interested in that, because they have all these stories from scholars, from doctors, from professionals, research, peer-reviewed journal articles showing that you can live a healthy life just by reducing the amount of meat, by being moderate and so on. So that worries me also. It's a very, very difficult story.
That's why, the people I've interviewed on this channel, I've had quite a few that follow a exclusively raw diet. And I think people should do what makes them look and feel the best. I'm just wondering if it's too much of a leap for people, if we're asking too much of them to try to get them to go raw vegan, when we would just really, I'm happier when people aren't eating animals for any reason, even if it's junk food veganism, I really am. While I prefer people to be healthy, of course, I would rather see them be a junk food vegan than eat animals.
Right, sure. No, you make it obviously an important point. But let me say this. I hope it doesn't sound stupid, but think about this. I always tell my students, especially, you are here. Obviously, you're lucky. You are privileged because you are college students or graduate students. So you're privileged. You have a higher intelligence, and you're here. Now think about it. Think about it in retrospect. Would you want to go back and on a couch, drinking beer all day, watching TV, doing nothing? Isn't it wonderful to be able to educate yourself? Obviously, that's what you want from yourself, right? You want the best. You are an intelligent person. You want to go to college. You want to study. You want to read. And it seems to me that there's something analogous to be said about diet. Obviously, you can live a decent life eating cooked food, but don't you want the best when it comes to your health? Obviously, you want the best. I never heard anybody who says, there are some crazy people, but normally most people say, sure, I want the best. I don't just want to feel good. I want to feel great. Well, that's what raw veganism is. Now, if you say to me, well, it's difficult. Okay, think about what is difficult. Going to grad school while you have a family and 2 jobs is difficult. Writing a dissertation is difficult. Writing a book is enormously difficult. Okay, living a moral life, not going to jail, not being killed, those things are difficult. Don't tell me. So I don't accept that argument that people say to me, oh, but it's so difficult. No, if you went to college, you got a graduate degree, or you are a professional, you're a doctor, don't tell me that little thing is difficult. Just changing your habits is difficult. Maybe at first it's difficult, but think about the obstacles you had to overcome to be where you are. Even you, Chef AJ, right? Or myself, or other scholars, other people. So I mean, the diet is small potatoes.
Again, or in your case, small avocados.
Small avocados.
What do your students think of you?
Oh well, some students think that I'm strange because I'm a nerd. I don't go out to restaurants. I don't have a social life. I don't go to clubs, bars, and so on. I just study and write books and write papers and give talks. And that's my life. That is my life. So I don't do the things that are normally expected from a person, from a normal human being. But a lot of students like me. I consider they like me from the reviews, from feedback, because I try to do my job with passion. I don't, as I said, I really love my job. I don't hate being a teacher. When I go to work, every time I go to work, it's like the first time you fall in love. Every time it's just the same feeling for me. Every semester I see new faces and I say, wow, I can share knowledge with other people. And it's not like, I remember being in college myself, being a student, where teachers were on the other side of the desk talking down to you and teaching you things. I don't use that approach. I really enjoy having discussions with my students. And my approach is if I can use an analogy or a metaphor, or whatever you want to call it, I open doors. That's what I do. I open doors that they were shut, they were closed, and students never saw inside that room. I open doors. That's what I do for them. And so that's beautiful for
Well,
me.
you seem very passionate about your life and your lifestyle. If people wanted to get your books, where would they go?
Well, my books are sold all over the world. The first one is translated in some other language. I don't remember which one. Turkish, I think. But you can find them anywhere. I mean, these are this is Routledge. Routledge is the biggest publisher in the world, so you can find it on Amazon. By the way, this one is a paperback. You can find it for $4, I think, on Amazon. You can find them anywhere, all bookstores, online, or anywhere. Just by Googling my name, you'll find my books, my work.
Any final
And by the way, I wanted to mention, if you Google my name, you can also find my YouTube channel, which is, I use it for really for academic purposes. So since the pandemic, I have been recording video lectures, because a lot of my classes now are virtual. And some of those classes are asynchronous, which means we don't meet even with Zoom. And so what I do, I tell my students to watch my video lectures. So if you're interested in many topics in ethics, metaphysics, logic, I have a lot of videos, and I keep posting video lectures on philosophy in general.
Well, I will make sure that those links are in the show notes. Any closing thoughts or final words or inspiration you'd like to share with the audience?
Well, my final word would be veganism is a strange beast. Lots of people are going vegan, but a lot of people are still haters for some reason. I don't understand why. They hate vegans. They think we are stupid. We think that we are want to feel superior, and so on. Now, ironically, or sadly, I should say, vegans think almost the same about raw vegans. And what I would like to say as a final thought is, try raw veganism. It doesn't cost you anything. Just try it. You can't die and live your life without ever having tried raw veganism and not knowing what it feels like to be a raw vegan. Just try it. Try it for a week or two. A month would be maybe optimal, at least, right? Just try it. And then call me, email me, text me, and tell me what do you think, because your headaches will go away, your hunger will go away, your cravings will go away, you will feel sharp, clean, and rested, and ready to go, and productive. Just try it. You just have to try it.
You know, I agree with you about the cravings aspect, and I hear that from a lot of the raw foodists. And I think part of it isn't necessarily because of the rawness of the diet, but because you exclude pretty much everything that's addictive.
That's true. That's true. That becomes superfluous. You eat lots of fresh greens and lots of fruit, as much fruit as you want, and you don't need the rest. You don't need to munch on something, snacks, or anything like that. That's very true.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. It was so nice to meet you, Dr. Alvaro.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. And thanks all of you for watching another episode of Chef AJ Live. Please come back tomorrow for another great show. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.